Have you ever come home expecting quiet, maybe a soft sigh of relief after days of grief, only to find your entire world thrown across the lawn like someone emptied your heart and stomped on it? That was exactly the moment my breath froze in my chest, and oh my God, I swear my knees almost gave out. I had just returned from my sister's funeral. My eyes still swollen, my clothes still carrying that heavy smell of wilted flowers and tears, and all I wanted was to sit down, drink some water, and breathe. But instead, I pulled into the driveway and gasped so loudly I startled myself, because there it was, my life spread across the yard like trash. My wedding dress box open, lace spilling out into the grass. My old photo albums lying face down in dirt. My husband's watch, the one he wore every day until the day he died, tossed near the mailbox like a cheap toy. Oh, my heart cracked open, just split in two. For a second, I honestly thought I was imagining it. Grief can make you hallucinate sometimes, you know. But then Danielle walked out onto the porch with this bright, sugary smile that made something hot crawl up my spine. "Oh, you're back early," she chirped, waving like she was greeting a neighbour, not a woman whose memories were being blown across the yard by the wind. I stood there, unable to move, my mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. What is this?" I finally whispered, my voice shaking so badly it hardly sounded like me. Danielle shrugged, flipping her perfect hair with a giggle. "Yes, an actual ha-ha-ha, as if it were all some kind of joke." "We just decided to clean out the old stuff," she said, her tone light but her eyes sharp, and hearing her call my things "old stuff" made my chest burn. "Old stuff?" That old stuff included my mother's shawl, my husband's last birthday card, my daughter's baby shoes, the blanket my sister knitted before cancer stole her away. My throat tightened and I felt an embarrassing little whimper escape. Oh, because the cruelty wasn't loud, it was intentional, quiet, cutting. And wouldn't you know it, hooks of realization started pulling at my ribs. Why now? Why when I was grieving? Why when I was far away at a funeral? I looked closer and noticed certain things were missing, things I knew had value. My mother's antique dresser gone. The little gold mirror from my grandmother gone. Boxes of jewellery gone. My wallet felt thin. My bank app wouldn't load. A cold rush went through me, like ice water dripping down my spine. Something was wrong, more wrong than the mess in front of me, but Danielle just kept smiling, tapping her nails against her phone like she was waiting for applause. "We figured we'd help you," she added sweetly. "You know, since you're getting older." Older? As if my age were some kind of disease she needed to clean around. I inhaled sharply, so shaky it almost sounded like a sob. "Where's Ethan?" I asked, my son somehow the only lifeline I could think of. She rolled her eyes. "Busy." He said I could handle it. Handle it? Handle what? Throwing his mother's life into the yard like garbage? My hands trembled so hard I had to grip my purse just to steady myself. And then Danielle said the words that turned my stomach completely. "You don't need to worry. We kept a couple things." The useful ones. Useful ones. My vision blurred with tears, big, hot, angry ones that slid down before I could stop them. I bent down to pick up a picture of my sister and me from years ago, and when I brushed the dirt off her face, something in me snapped, quietly, softly. And while Danielle stood there with that fake sweet smile, hooks of fury, hooks of grief, hooks of "how dare you" tangled inside me, I straightened my spine, swallowing a sob, and whispered, "You had no right." She laughed again, a little mocking, "Ha ha ha," and said, "Actually, we live here too." We decided it was time. We decided. As if my home, my space, my memories were a community project. For a moment, I couldn't even breathe. A painful, tight ache squeezed the center of my chest, and I felt myself trembling, not out of weakness, but out of shock, the kind that makes your pulse throb in your ears. My mind kept spinning. Why would she do this? What was she planning? Why today of all days? And really, why did she smile while destroying what mattered to me? My heart whispered the answer, because she thought I couldn't stop her. Because I had just come from a funeral. because she thought grief made me easy to control. Little did she know, grief doesn't make some women weaker, it makes them sharper, stronger, silent in a dangerous way. As I picked up a handful of scattered photos, my phone buzzed in my hand. My fingers shook as I opened it, but the moment I saw the notification, a spark lit in my chest. One spark. One name. Mr. Mendez. My lawyer, my protector, my husband's old friend, and suddenly, despite my tears, I felt the tiniest flicker of power returning to my voice. Danielle's confidence faltered when she saw my expression change, not into a smile, but into something steadier, colder, a quiet kind of strength. "What are you doing?" she asked, her tone dipping for the first time. I didn't answer her. I just dialed the number with a trembling thumb and whispered the 7 words that would shift everything. "Mr. Mendez, it's time." She's crossed the line. And that, right there, was the moment the balance of power began to shift. Not loudly, not violently, but silently, like a storm building far away, about to break over someone who never saw it coming. Danielle thought she threw away my things, but she had no idea she had just thrown away her control. Have you ever looked at someone you once welcomed into your home and suddenly realized they had been studying your weaknesses the entire time, waiting for the day you were fragile enough to break? Because that's what hit me the moment I stepped inside. The moment the door closed behind me with a soft click that felt more like a trap than a welcome. I swear my breath caught in my throat. Oh, like someone gently pressed a hand against my chest and whispered, "Watch carefully now." Danielle followed me in with that same sugary smile, but something in her eyes had shifted, sharp, calculating, almost excited. "We just wanted to give the house a fresh start," she said, shrugging casually, even though my belongings were still sprawled across the yard like a tornado of memories. A sudden wave of nausea rolled through me. Fresh start for whom? She leaned against the counter like she owned the place, tapping her nails. Click, click, click. The sound scraping my nerves. "Honestly," she continued, "your things were taking up too much space. This house needed to feel younger." Younger. She said it with a giggle, a half laugh that made my skin crawl. I felt a little ha-ha-ha bubble in my chest, but not because anything was funny. No, it was one of those shocked, shaky laughs people make when the world suddenly tilts in the wrong direction. And as I looked around, I started noticing more things missing. My mother's big wooden chest, gone. The framed embroidery my grandmother made, gone. The antique trunk I kept in the corner, gone. My heart squeezed so tightly that tears prickled instantly. "Where are my things?" I asked, my voice cracking embarrassingly. Danielle didn't even pause. "Oh, we donated some of it, sold a few pieces too. You'd be shocked how much old furniture goes for nowadays." "Sold? Donated?" My throat closed and I swear I felt my pulse in my ears. "Danielle," I whispered, "those weren't yours to touch." She raised an eyebrow. "Ethan said it was fine." Hooks dug into my stomach at that moment. Ethan? My son? He agreed. No, something wasn't right. My son could be careless, distracted, blind at times, but he wasn't cruel. Unless someone guided him, unless someone whispered in his ear, unless someone convinced him that love meant choosing sides. A painful little sigh escaped me, the kind that shakes your shoulders. "Where is Ethan?" she smirked. Busy. That word again, busy when I needed him. Busy when she made a disaster of my life. Busy when I returned from a funeral. Busy while she tore apart everything I held close. I swallowed hard, trembling, my hands shaking like leaves in the wind. "Danielle, you had no right to sell anything without asking me." Her smile disappeared so quickly it almost startled me. Her eyes hardened, her voice dipped lower, colder. "Actually, I did. We live here too. You forget that." Hooks everywhere, tugging at the back of my mind. This wasn't cleaning. This wasn't helpful. This wasn't misunderstanding. This was a plan, a slow invasion, a quiet takeover. "You're still grieving," she said, feigning pity. "You shouldn't worry about old stuff. You need space. And honestly, this place felt suffocating before." Suffocating. She had been suffocating me for months. slowly, politely, sweetly, with suggestions, ideas, little improvements. And I, foolish, trusting, exhausted, I let it slide. I allowed her to rearrange things, replace things, insert herself in rooms that once held laughter and love, not judgment. But this wasn't rearranging. This was erasing. My knees shook, and I steadied myself against the wall, swallowing the tiny sob rising in my throat. Oh, grief mixes with anger in the strangest ways. It makes your chest tight and your voice soft at the same time. Finally, I whispered, "Where is the chest with the silver frame, the photos inside?" Those were the only ones I had left of my mother. Danielle blinked like she didn't even remember what she had done. "Oh, those old pictures? Ethan said you didn't need them anymore. They smelled musty. Musty. Musty." She threw away my memories because they smelled musty. I gasped, an actual sharp inhale that hurt my lungs. I felt like the world spun for a moment. My grief wasn't just emotional, it felt physical. "You threw them away?" I croaked. She shrugged again, casual as ever. "Well, yeah, we can always take new photos. You know, modernize the family image." Modernize. 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 A hysterical "ah-ha-ha" escaped my lips, the quiet, trembling kind. New photos cannot replace the ones you can never retake. My mother, my sister, my husband, the people who built my life, my roots, my history, my love, gone because this woman thought modernizing was more important than human emotion. Suddenly, everything inside me went still. Not weak, but still in that dangerous, quiet way storms go still before lightning strikes. My tears dried, not because I wasn't sad anymore, but because sadness had transformed into something sharper, clearer, stronger. Danielle's smile faltered when she saw my expression change. She stepped back slightly, folding her arms. "Don't make this dramatic," she muttered. "Dramatic!" Oh, she hadn't seen dramatic yet. She had no idea how much strength I had swallowed over the years. She had no idea whose name was still on the deed. She had no idea what walls she had knocked on. She had no idea who she was provoking. I took a slow breath, feeling something awaken in my spine. "You should have waited," I whispered. "You should have asked." She scoffed. "Asked who? You." I held her gaze. "Yes," I said softly, "because this house is still mine." Her face froze, her smile died completely. And a tiny thrill, just a small spark went through me as she whispered, "What do you mean, yours?" "Oh, sweetheart." "You'll find out." And in that moment, watching her confidence crack just a little, I realized she had no idea the real storm was already on its way. Have you ever watched someone's confidence vanish so fast that their smile actually falls off their face like it was glued on? Because that's exactly what happened the moment Danielle heard me say, "This house is still mine." Her eyebrows jumped up, her jaw twitched, and for the first time since I stepped onto that lawn full of thrown memories, she didn't have a single sarcastic word ready. The silence that followed was almost sweet. Almost. What do you mean yours?" she stammered, suddenly blinking way too fast. "Oh." The little tremble in her voice gave me a bit of strength right then. Just a small spark, nothing dramatic yet. I took a slow breath, feeling the air settle in my chest, and whispered, "Your assumptions don't change the paperwork." She looked genuinely confused, as if the world had handed her a script, and this was not the line she expected. But, Ethan said. She started. I sighed softly, one of those long, tired sighs that comes when someone is so deeply wrong but so deeply convinced of their own rightness. "Your husband didn't know everything," I told her quietly. And oh, the way her face tightened at the words, "your husband," like she owned him, controlled him, wore him like a badge. Well, that told me more than her smile ever did. Her voice sharpened. "Are you saying the deed isn't in Ethan's name?" I let out a tiny laugh, a shaky little ha that wasn't really humour but disbelief. "No," I said, "I'm saying it's not in yours or his." She froze. Actually froze. Even the tapping of her nails stopped. It was almost peaceful. But inside me, memories began swirling, flashes of the day my husband and I sat at the old lawyer's desk signing those papers. I remember the pen in his hand, the weight of the decision he made, and the soft way he squeezed my fingers afterward. "This house," he whispered back then, "stays yours as long as you live. No matter who comes in or out of our son's life, no one gets to push you out." Oh, remembering his voice made my eyes sting instantly. I blinked, swallowing the lump in my throat as Danielle's panic grew louder than words. "That doesn't make sense," she snapped. "Why would he leave it to you and not his own child?" I met her eyes steadily. "Because he trusted me to protect it," I said. "Because he knew I wouldn't let greed twist it." Her nostrils flared, her cheeks reddening. "Are you calling me greedy?" she hissed. "Oh, sweetheart, you called yourself greedy the moment you tossed my memories into the yard. But I didn't say that. I stayed calm, dangerously calm, the kind of calm that comes after crying too long. I'm calling you careless," I said. "And careless people shouldn't touch things they don't understand." She let out this loud, ugly scoff, like she couldn't believe I dared to speak to her that way. But why shouldn't I? She'd already trampled on my life, on my grief, on my home. The least I could do was give her a dose of reality. "This is ridiculous," she muttered, pacing now, her steps sharp and frantic. "Everything Ethan told me, everything he'd promised, he said this would be our home." I shrugged softly. People promise things when they don't know the truth yet. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again like a stunned goldfish. That sight alone would have made me chuckle if the situation weren't so painful. And, oh, speaking of painful, right then, the emotion I'd been pushing down all day finally made my chest tremble. A soft, shaky exhale left my lips, and I whispered, almost to myself, "I can't believe you threw out my mother's pictures." That hit harder than the deed, harder than the legal truths, harder than any victory. For the first time, her face softened just a fraction, but not out of guilt, out of fear. Because she realized that while she was tearing apart objects, she was tearing apart my heart too, and she hadn't planned for the emotional consequences. She stepped closer, lowering her voice like she was trying to piece things back together. "Look, maybe we just misunderstood each other. Maybe we—" I held up a hand. "No," I said, "you didn't misunderstand. You assumed." And assuming was her biggest mistake. Assumptions had power until facts showed up. And oh, facts were about to drag her hopes across the floor. "Show me the deed," she demanded suddenly, straightening her spine as if she had recovered her confidence. "If you're telling the truth, show me." Her tone was cold and sharp, like she thought she could intimidate me into proving my own rights. "Oh, the irony. I don't need to show you anything," I said calmly, "but I will show Mr. Mendez." Her eyes narrowed. "Your lawyer." "Why do you need a lawyer?" I tilted my head. "Because you touched what wasn't yours," she gasped, a real, high-pitched little gasp that reminded me of someone dropping a plate. I could see it clearly now. She hadn't just thrown out my belongings, she had gone through them, sold some, stolen some, and suddenly everything made sense. The missing jewelry, the missing antiques, the empty drawers. She thought the house would soon be hers, so everything inside it was hers too. But she miscalculated. Oh, she miscalculated beautifully. I let her stand there in that stunned silence for a moment longer, watching the panic rise in her eyes like water in a sinking boat. And then my phone buzzed. "Mr. Mendez," I felt the tiniest smile tug at my lips, not joy, not triumph, just relief. The kind of relief that tastes warm in your throat. Danielle watched me answer, her face draining of color, and I swear, as the conversation began, hooks wrapped around her confidence and pulled, one by one, quietly, effectively. Danielle thought she could rewrite the story of this house, but she had no idea the next chapter wasn't being written by her at all. Have you ever made one phone call so simple, so quiet, that the person standing in front of you doesn't even realize their entire plan is collapsing until the final word leaves your lips? Because that's exactly how it felt when I lifted my trembling hand, pressed call on Mr. Mendez's number, and watched Danielle's face drain of colour like someone slowly unplugged her power source. Oh, even before he answered, even before I spoke, something inside me finally clicked back into place, like a woman who had been bent for too long finally straightened her spine. "Mr. Mendez," I breathed out, my voice shaking but steady enough. Danielle's eyes widened and she whispered, "You don't need a lawyer. Why are you calling your lawyer?" That little edge of panic in her voice made something tiny inside me smirk, not out of cruelty, but out of relief, because for the first time today, I wasn't the one trembling in fear. She was. Mr. Mendez answered with that calm, deep tone that always made my late husband trust him without hesitation, and hearing it again made my throat tighten. "Oh, grief is strange like that, mixing sadness and comfort together. I'm home," I whispered into the phone. "And it's worse than we thought." Danielle flinched like I had slammed a door in her face. Hooks pulled tight inside her expression, her gaze flicking between me and the phone like she was watching a slow, inevitable disaster she caused. "Tell me everything," Mr. Mendez said, and I did. My things thrown across the lawn, the missing items, the sales, the donations, the photographs in the trash can. As I spoke, Danielle's breathing got louder, faster, sharper like. She was running out of air in a room only she had suffocated. "So, she sold your mother's dresser?" he repeated, and the disappointment in his voice wasn't even aimed at her. It was aimed at the situation, at the disrespect, at the audacity. That reaction alone made my shoulders relax a little, a soft sigh slipping out. "Yes," I whispered, and she threw away pictures. "Pictures!" That word cracked something inside me, and before I could stop myself, a soft weeping sound escaped. Quiet, shaky, the kind of crying you try to swallow, but it still leaks through. Danielle took a step back, her hands curling into her sweater like she wanted to disappear. "All right," Mr. Mendez said, voice turning firm like a judge's gavel. "We move forward immediately. Do not touch anything. Do not confront them further. I'll be there in 30 minutes. 30 minutes. 30 minutes. That was all the time Danielle had left before reality arrived in a suit and tie. When I hung up, the silence in the room was so thick, I swear even the light paused. Danielle finally found her voice, but it came out cracked, thin. "Why? Why would you call a lawyer?" "We didn't do anything wrong. We. Oh, that word again. We. Like she owned half of everything. Like she was entitled to my life." I tilted my head slightly, my voice soft but sharp enough to slice through her excuses. "You touched what wasn't yours." Her face twisted. "Ethan said it was fine." I shook my head slowly. Ethan didn't own it. She blinked, still stunned, still unwilling to accept that the script in her head wasn't being followed by anyone else. But we live here. Living somewhere doesn't mean owning it," I said quietly, and the moment those words left my mouth, I saw her whole narrative crumble piece by piece. Hooks pulling at her lies, at her false confidence, at the fantasy she had built in her mind. Her cheeks flushed red, and she let out a shaky little laugh. "Ha ha ha!" The nervous type, not the confident one she used earlier. "You're just trying to scare me," she whispered. "Ethan told me everything would transfer soon." I sighed, not from weakness, but from finally seeing the truth. "He told you what you wanted to hear," I said, "not what was real." She seemed to sway a little, like her legs weren't steady anymore. "Show me the deed," she demanded again, voice shaking like she didn't even believe herself. "If it's yours, prove it." Another sigh left me, softer this time. "I don't need to prove anything to you. The law already knows." Her eyes widened, pupils shrinking with fear, and she whispered, "What does that mean?" Before I could answer, we both heard the car door outside. Ethan's. Oh boy, the timing was almost poetic. I felt my stomach twist, not from fear but from heartbreak, because I knew he walked into this unaware that his silence these past months had deep consequences. Danielle ran to the window like a child caught stealing candy. "You can't tell him," she hissed. "You'll twist everything." I blinked slowly. I don't have to twist anything. The truth stands on its own. And oh, the panic in her eyes. Pure, raw panic told me everything. She had done this behind his back too. She hadn't just disrespected me, she had manipulated him into believing he was taking control of his future. But the truth? She was taking control of mine. The door opened. Ethan stepped inside, eyes tired, shoulders slumped, unaware that his wife had lit a fuse he'd have to stomp out with his own hands. He glanced at my tear-streaked face, then at Danielle's frantic expression, then at the chaos on the lawn outside. "What happened?" he asked, voice already shaking. Danielle rushed to him, grabbing his arm. "She's lying. She's trying to take the house from us. I didn't even flinch, didn't raise my voice, didn't defend myself." I simply said softly, "The deed never left my name, Ethan." He froze. Everyone froze. That sentence was the match. And the silence that followed was the flame. And in that heavy, breathless pause, I realized something. This wasn't just about a house anymore. This was about everything they tried to take from me. Because that's exactly what happened after I said the words, "The deed never left my name." The silence in the house wasn't peaceful. It was explosive, like lightning trying to decide where to strike. Ethan looked at me with wide eyes, his face going pale, while Danielle clung to his arm like a child afraid of losing her last toy. Oh, my heart squeezed painfully, not because I wanted to hurt him, but because I knew this truth was going to split his world open. "Mom, what are you talking about?" he whispered, and that trembling in his voice cracked me even deeper than the sight of my things on the lawn had. Before I answered, I let my eyes drift toward the window, where my memories lay scattered in the grass, and for a moment I felt such a heavy, chest-tightening sadness that my breath came out shaky. "Your father left the house to me," I whispered. "Only me." "As long as I live, nothing changes hands." Danielle let out a small gasp, sharp, panicked, and then tried to recover with a ridiculous little ha-ha-ha, one of those fake laughs people make when they're trying to hide terror. "She's lying," she insisted, her voice rising. "She's old. She's confused. Ethan, don't listen." I sighed softly, because the insult didn't even sting anymore. It just showed her desperation. "Your mother is not confused," Ethan muttered, and that one line made Danielle snap her mouth shut. He turned to me again, eyes trembling, voice breaking. "Why didn't you tell me?" Oh, that question hit hard, harder than I expected. "Because," I said softly, "I didn't think my son would ever stand beside someone who threw my life into the yard." His face crumpled, like he wanted to argue but couldn't. Danielle, however, launched into full panic mode. "Ethan, she's manipulating you. She wants to control everything. This was supposed to be our home." Her voice cracked at the end, frustration pouring out, and I realized in that moment she wasn't mourning the loss of a home, she was mourning the loss of control. Hooks of truth began pulling at the surface of her lies one by one. I took a slow breath, my chest rising with a mixture of grief and steady anger. "You threw out my belongings," I said softly. "You sold things that didn't belong to you. You took money from my accounts without asking. And now you want to claim my home too?" Danielle flinched like each sentence was a slap. "I didn't steal anything," she shrieked. "Those accounts were joint." I raised an eyebrow. "They were joint with Ethan, not you." Ethan stiffened, blinking rapidly. "What accounts?" he asked, his tone suddenly sharp, afraid. Danielle went still, completely still. That silence, that silence told every truth she had been trying to hide for months. My heart broke for him in that moment, seeing the realization starting to drip into his expression. Slow, painful, inevitable. "Danielle," he whispered, "what did you do?" That was the first time her confidence truly shattered. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came out. Just trembling, desperate breaths. Meanwhile, something inside me finally clicked from fear into resolve. I wiped a tear from my cheek, the kind that stings, but my hands didn't shake anymore. "I already froze the accounts this morning," I said quietly. Your access is gone. Danielle jerked her head toward me, eyes wide like I had just set her world on fire. You what? She screamed, voice cracking. You can't do that. I tilted my head. I already did. It felt strange, powerful even, like reclaiming a piece of myself I'd forgotten I had. She started pacing, breathing fast, hair flying, muttering, No, 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 this can't be happening. She can't take everything from us. And I gently interrupted. I didn't take anything. You tried to. Ethan sank into a chair, his face in his hands. Danielle, he whispered in disbelief. Did you really use my mom's account? Did you sell her things? She didn't answer him directly. Instead, she spun toward me again, pointing with a shaky finger. You think you can just take back control? You think you can just push us out? You don't own US. I swallowed, feeling that ache in my chest, but my voice stayed steady. I don't want to own you, I said. I want to protect myself. She scoffed angrily. Protect yourself from what? From the woman who emptied my drawers while I was burying my sister, I whispered. Oh, the way Ethan's face changed at that, his shoulders trembling, his jaw tightening, grief and anger mixing in his eyes. It made my heart sink even deeper. A soft weeping sound slipped from me, quiet, just one shaky breath. But it was enough to make Danielle snap again. You're being dramatic, she yelled. Those things were ugly and old. They were my memories, I said, voice thin but sharp. Not yours to judge, not yours to touch, not yours to throw away. Her anger flickered into fear, real fear. Because she finally saw it, I wasn't broken. I wasn't confused. I wasn't weak. I was a woman who had reached her limit, and that terrified her. I stepped forward slightly, my voice low and steady. As of today, you have no access to my money, my accounts, my documents, or my home. You wanted power. You miscalculated. Danielle's face twisted, her eyes filling with furious tears. You can't do this to us, she screamed, stomping a foot like a child. You have to let us live here. I shook my head slowly. No, I don't. And I won't. Ethan looked up at me with red, exhausted eyes, whispering, Mom, what are you saying? I exhaled deeply, my chest trembling with both sorrow and strength. I'm saying, I whispered, that the house is becoming a rental. Danielle gasped, a loud, sharp, painful sound, like her breath had been punched out of her. Ethan's eyes widened, and I finished quietly. And I will be the landlord. And as the weight of those words settled into the room, I realized Danielle's biggest fear wasn't losing the house. Her biggest fear was realizing she never owned an inch of it to begin with. Have you ever watched a storm calm down not because it ran out of thunder, but because it finally realized the house it was trying to destroy had stronger walls than it ever imagined? That's exactly how it felt in the final hours of this long, exhausting nightmare, when Danielle's screams faded into shaky sobs, when Ethan's anger dissolved into heartbreak, and when I finally felt the weight of months lift off my shoulders like someone was gently untying knots I didn't even know I had. For a moment, the house was painfully quiet, the kind of silence that's so thick you can feel it brushing against your skin. Danielle stood in the living room, her face blotchy, her breath uneven, her hands clenched so hard her knuckles were white. She looked like someone who had been fighting shadows and finally realized the shadows weren't enemies, they were truths. Ethan sat on the edge of the couch, elbows on his knees, head bowed. Oh, when I saw him like that, my heart cracked in a different way. Not in anger, not in resentment, but in that soft, painful way a mother feels when she sees her child hurting because of their own choices. He wasn't a villain. He was a man who trusted the wrong person. He was a son who thought love meant choosing sides, not knowing love should never be a battlefield. I took a small step toward him, and for the first time in months he didn't step back. He looked up at me, eyes red, full of guilt, and whispered, Mom, I'm so sorry. And oh, just hearing that, my chest tightened, my throat burned, a shaky sigh slipped out of me. Not because everything was magically fixed, but because the apology wasn't polished or rehearsed. It came from a place of raw, broken truth. And truth, no matter how late it arrives, is always healing. But before I could even breathe in that moment, Danielle snapped. "Are you serious, Ethan? You're apologizing to her?" She pointed at me like I was the antagonist in a story where she had written herself the hero. She stomped toward him, her voice high and frantic, trembling with desperation. "She's ruining everything. She destroyed our future." Enough, Ethan muttered, not loud but sharp enough to slice straight through her hysteria. Danielle stumbled back, gasping, like she had been slapped by reality. And I swear, the entire room shifted. It wasn't me who put her in her place, it wasn't the lawyer. It was Ethan, finally, painfully, clearly seeing her. She tried to reach for him again, but he moved away, rubbing his temples. "You lied to me," he whispered. "About the baby, about the accounts." "About Mom." She started crying loud, choking sobs. But even through her tears, you could hear the panic. "I did it for us. You said you wanted a future. You said you were tired of waiting." Ethan shook his head. "I said I wanted stability. I never said to steal it." Oh, the cracks in her voice when she screamed, "I'm not a thief." But the truth was laid bare now, and everyone in the room could finally see it. She wasn't crying from regret. She was crying because her plan collapsed in front of her eyes. And she had nothing left to control. Mr. Mendez cleared his throat softly, reminding us he was still there. "Mrs. Reyes," he said to me, "do you want to file the charges now or wait until the full report is ready?" Danielle froze. Then she spun toward me, her eyes wide and terrified. "Please," she whispered, her voice suddenly small. "Please don't. I'll fix everything. I'll put things back. I'll leave." And for a split second, I felt a weird ache. Not sympathy, but that heavy realization that she could have been different. She could have chosen honesty. She could have chosen grace. She could have chosen to join this family instead of trying to conquer it. But she didn't. She chose greed. She chose manipulation. She chose cruelty. And choices have consequences. I took a slow breath. "I'm not filing anything today," I said gently. Danielle gasped with relief and covered her mouth, weeping. "But," I added, my voice steady, "you will leave this house today, and you will not return." Her relief vanished. She went pale again. "Ethan," she whispered, "say something." "Tell her I can stay." Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time I saw finality in his eyes. Not anger, not love, just exhaustion. "I can't help you anymore, Danielle," he said quietly, and she broke. She screamed his name, threw a vase, slammed her fists on the wall. But none of it mattered now. Her power was gone, her leverage was gone, her lies were gone, and she knew it. Mr. Mendez escorted her out while she cried and begged and cursed under her breath. The door slammed behind her, and the house finally felt clean again, quiet again, mine again. Ethan collapsed onto the couch, burying his face in his hands. "I messed everything up," he whispered. "Oh." I sat beside him, placing my hand gently on his back. "You trusted someone who didn't deserve you," I said softly. "That's not a crime, that's a lesson." He started crying, really crying, and the sound of it tore through me. I wrapped my arms around him, and for the first time in so long, he didn't pull away. He leaned into me like he used to when he was a little boy, afraid of thunderstorms. "I don't know how to fix this," he sobbed. "You start by choosing better next time," I whispered, "and by remembering who you are. Because even after everything, after the betrayal, the chaos, the humiliation, I never stopped believing he could find his way back. Families break, yes, but they also bend, heal, and rebuild." And as we sat there together on that worn-out couch, both of us shaking, sighing, weeping softly, I felt something fragile but real stitching back into place. The bond we almost lost. And as the sun finally rose outside, pouring soft light across the home she tried so hard to destroy, I realized something. Danielle underestimated me, but even more than that, she underestimated what a mother will do to protect the life she built.